This is Judith Lay welcoming you to Manx Radio and to the podcast of this week's edition of At Your Service. Manx Radio! Taking over the care of two churches is an exciting and challenging prospect. But how much more of a challenge is it if you're following someone who's led those two churches for almost 30 years? Well, my guest this morning can answer that and a lot more questions because he's Father John Hindley, the Roman Catholic priest who now has care of St Patrick's, the Catholic Church in Peel, and Our Lady, Star of the Sea and St Macald, the Catholic Church in Ramsey. Those two churches were in the care of Father Brian O Mahony for almost 30 years, right up until his death in April this year. And as we're going to be talking a lot about Christian service today, it seems fitting that we should start with music from the Porter's Gate Worship Project. Composer David Ogden wrote this hauntingly beautiful musical setting of the words of the 16th century saint Teresa of Avila. Christ has no body now but yours.
Christ has no body now but yours. No hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes with which he sees. Yours are the feet with which he walks. Yours are the hands with which he blesses all the world. Yours are the hands. Christ has no body now but yours. No hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes with which he sees. Yours are the feet with which he walks. Yours are the hands with which he blesses all the world. Yours are the
The Porter's Gate Worship Project featuring Josh Garrels and the musical setting by David Ogden of Teresa of Avila's Prayer of Christian Service. Christ has no body now but yours. Someone whose life is all about Christian service is my special guest today. He's someone who will soon become a familiar figure on the streets of Ramsey and of Peel. And it was in St Patrick's Church in Peel a couple of days ago that I caught up with Father John Hindley. Congratulations on your appointment looking after the Roman Catholic churches in Peel and in Ramsey. This is not your first ministry on the island because you were curate to Canon Brendan Alger in St Mary's, a time that you said to me that he was a great person to be with at that time of formation.
He was fantastic because at the time I was still relatively newly ordained. I'd only been a priest for 1 year when I was asked to come to the island. And Brendan was absolutely fantastic. I think most people who know Brendan who are listening to this will recognise he was such a kind, generous, free person. It was quite funny because we used to have a lovely secretary called Kath Kenyuk, and every time I went through the door, I would feel obliged to tell her where I was going. with Brendan, he never once asked what I was doing. He always just implicitly trusted me, and that was fantastic. He was supportive and encouraging anything I wanted to do. He was great. I certainly look on that as essentially my first appointment. What I always say is that being a priest is like being pregnant. You either are or you're not. And so you can't learn until you actually are a priest in a parish in a lot of ways. And so Brendan was great because he was so supportive and encouraging. And also he had an awful lot of wisdom. He'd been a priest for 35, 40 years probably at that stage. He taught in seminaries and that sort of thing. So he had that theological kind of grounding, but he also had the practical experience. When I was in St Mary's the first time around, he'd be sat watching Big Brother and that sort of thing. So he was aware of what was going on. He stayed up to date, and that was such a great example for me. And I feel so very blessed to have been with him and then, maintained a friendship with him after I left the island and he retired and so on.
The Roman Catholic Church on the Isle of Man is part of the Archdiocese of Liverpool. Mm-hmm. Now, you're from Merseyside yourself.
Yes.
Let's explore a little bit about your background. What I'm interested to know is why you're a priest.
Basically, I was born into a Catholic family. My mum, who sadly died last year, she was an Irish Catholic. I have a twin brother and a sister who's 2 years older. Went through Catholic education. And then whilst I was at secondary school, the archbishops of the time had the foresight to appoint priests as school chaplains. And so there was a couple of priests who were kind of different from the priests that I had known before. They were younger in age, and part of their role was to be a chaplain to the school and got involved in youth groups and all that sort of thing. And I think basically it was kind of through that the sense of a dawning vocation came. And it was one of those things where it's the still small but insistent voice, that was where the Lord was calling me. And it was kind of the irresistible pull. And so I started exploring that through archdiocesan vocations directors, going to vocations groups, meeting other lads who were interested in the priesthood, who are still friends today. People often talk about vocation as if it's kind of one big step, but my experience was that it was lots of little steps. So, telling somebody else, telling mum, telling another priest, then meeting the vocations director, meeting the archbishop, and all lots of little decisions rather than kind of this is what God wants me to do and full steam ahead.
It's the people you meet on the road.
Yes.
In some way, their life, their attitude is attractive.
Yeah.
And Catholic priesthood training is long, isn't it? There's a lot of opportunity.
And getting longer. I went to Ushaw College outside of Durham when I was 18, and then after 6 years felt that wasn't quite long enough. So one of the things I opted to do was to do a PGCE. So I'm not no longer, but I was qualified to teach RE in a secondary school. And that to me was a really good use of a year because it gave me skills that are still useful to this day as a priest. But also there can be a sort of momentum and training for the priesthood. And actually having that year away from a kind of official training for the priesthood allowed me to discern it more in a non-pressured environment. And so at the end of that year, I was able to say yes, and I went to see Archbishop Kelly, who was the Archbishop at the time, and he said yes, and then I was ordained priest then in 1998.
Is priestly training now very different?
Yes, so I think basically they like people to do what's now called a propedeutic year. You can rely on the church to give it a complicated name. I think it's like a year of preparation. So I think most lads who are thinking about priesthood now go to somewhere like Valladolid in Spain and spend a year there. It was interesting, I was talking recently to Canon Philip Gillespie of the Co-Cathedral, and he used to be the rector of the Beda College, and he told me that they are now extending the training at the Beda. What had previously been a 4-year course is becoming longer. So I think that seems to be the trend of preparation, that it's actually getting longer, hopefully to prepare people better.
But also, with a Catholic priest, a Roman Catholic priest, it is a huge commitment. You have to turn your back on conventional family life. There is no compromise. And you have to know that more than anything, it's serving God in this way that is right for you.
I think the whole purpose of the years of training is to obviously prepare you, but also to discern God's will, because it is a big deal. It is countercultural, through my work in the prison, people are kind of fascinated by it because it's not something that happens every day, but it is an essential part of it. And I think the church does what it can and is constantly evolving the preparation to equip people, for priesthood in the 21st century.
There can be a point of admiration where people say, if this man has given up having a wife and children and all the things that the world sets so much value by, what he actually is committed to, he must be really, really committed to. And that's quite a role model. It's quite an inspiration, isn't it?
I think so, because in a world where commitment is not fashionable, we know the marriage statistics and all that sort of thing, it is quite a kind of dramatic choice. But I think it's one that also opens up lots of things. I have been so privileged to have access to people's lives at really important moments, the happy and the sad. And I think to not have the responsibilities of family, children and all those kind of aspects of life, it does free you up to be able to be more available for lots of people.
Do you not think also that you have to be very careful of your own self-care? And this is not a personal question to you, it's just about priests in general, because the old model of a presbytery that was full of brother priests, there'd be somebody to talk to, there'd be somebody to talk to confidentially. Yeah. You don't have that now.
Not in the formal way that we used to of living with other priests. I mean, one of the things that we've done as part of the synod process that we did starting in 2020 is there were various areas identified in church life where we could improve. And one of them is care for priests. And a priest friend of mine, Father Grant Maddock, he leads in that work in the diocese. And he's done really, really good work supporting priests. Priests are taking the lead and saying, this is what we need to be able to thrive and serve the communities. And so we are getting a lot better, I think, at that.
So from being a curate here, you went across, you were in charge of parishes across, still in the Archdiocese, yes, but on the adjacent island, yeah, and then back here, yeah, and involved in prison ministry,
yes,
as part of the chaplaincy team.
The last 2.5 years that I've been working in the prison, I've been working with my two colleagues, Kevin Vondy from the Free Churches and also Brian Evans-Smith, who's the Anglican chaplain. So we always work ecumenically. Personally, I enjoy meeting with people in the same line of work because you have an understanding. I'm not saying that people outside don't understand it, but when you are working in that coalface, you do have a shared understanding. One of the things I'm very conscious of is Jesus' command, whatsoever you did for the least of my brothers, you did for me. And when I was in prison, you came to see me. So in ministering in a prison, as far as I'm concerned, and I know my brother chaplains feel the same way, that we are fulfilling Jesus' command. And so it's perhaps not fashionable work, but actually really, really important work to be able to make an impact on people's lives and show them that they are loved by God. Whatever they have done in the past, they are still loved by God.
Do you find that you're well received in the prison?
Some of the time, if people want to chat to me, that's great. If people don't want to chat to me, that's equally fine. And we just offer a service. Whatever people want from us, we are there to provide and provide support. Prisoners experience life events, bereavements and so on. We are there to support them through that.
How much support are you able to give to the staff?
That's an important part as well. I mean, we get to know them well. I mean, I did some work in a prison in the UK, and that was like a prison of about 2,000 residents. Here on the island, although we are close to full a lot of the time, we're talking about roughly 150 residents. So we get to know the staff and we're able to build relationships. They know my name and I know their names, which is not possible across because of the numbers involved. And we are there for them as well. We offer any support, anything that we can do if they want to chat, whatever. We're there to help them and support them. We've done quite a lot of training on a trauma-informed response to those in the care of the prison. And I think that to me is to understand that a lot of these people have come from backgrounds. Nobody's saying that they don't have a choice, but their choice might be less free than yours or mine. And so to understand some of that and to be able to help them to turn their lives around, because it's in everyone's best interests that these people, they don't do it again. And so whatever the chaplaincy team can do to help that come about is what we are there for.
You've got a very significant service coming up in St Patrick's Church in Derby. Tell me a little bit about that, John.
So basically, there is an annual Sunday called Prison Sunday when we pray for all those in prison, those who work in prison, and also those who are victims of crime. And in a conversation with Bishop Tricia, who's fantastically supportive of the work that goes on in the prison, she said Prison Sunday is occurring in the UK around the time of our general election over here. And she was keen for as many people as possible to be able to come to Prison Sunday. And it's a great opportunity for people to come and support the work that goes on in the prison.
So, bearing in mind Bishop Tricia's suggestion that it would be better to move the service away from the national date in September, our special service for Prison Sunday will be next Sunday, June the 21st, in Derby Church at 2:00, with refreshments afterwards. The service is open to everyone to pray together for the needs of men and women in prison, prison staff, victims, survivors, and their families.
When I needed a neighbor, were you there? Were you there? I needed a neighbor, were you there? You know the creed and the color and the name don't matter, I'll be there. But when the name wasn't Jesus, were you there? Were you there? When the name wasn't Jesus, were you there? You know the creed and the color and the name, they all don't matter, were you there? When they took me to prison, were you there? Were you there? Hell, they took me to prison, were you there? And the creed and the color and the name, they don't matter, were you there? Wherever you travel, I'll be there, I'll be there. Wherever you travel, I'll be there. And the creed and your color and your name, they all won't matter, I'll be there. You'll find me there, I'll be there.
Sydney Carter and When I Needed a Neighbour. I'm talking this morning with Roman Catholic priest Father John Hindley, who will continue his work as a prison chaplain alongside his new ministry caring for the Catholic churches in Ramsey and Peel. However, there is the issue of Father Brian O Mahony, who was the parish priest for getting on for 30 years.
Father Brian had been going into the prison for 26 years before me. And occasionally people would say to me, oh, you've got big shoes to fill. So I tried to think of some kind of witty riposte that I could say because I couldn't be Father Brian if I tried. So when people used to say to me, oh, you've got big shoes to fill, I used to say, fortunately, he's taken his shoes with him. So it meant then that I am different. You know, he had talents that I will never have. And I think people understand that it will be different because I am a different person from who he was. And please God, I have got my own talents and gifts to bring as well.
It has to be different, but they don't necessarily need to be seismic changes.
Exactly. Once you've had somebody around for 29 years in your church, you do get used to them. And it's an inevitability of life. Change will happen. I understand, you know, for the parishioners, it is an upheaval. It is an upheaval for me as well because, you know, I'm moving home and also changes in my work. You know, I'm more familiar with the community in Peel because I've been celebrating Sunday Mass with Father Brian for the last 2.5 years. The community in Ramsey I'm getting to know, but they've been lovely. You know, I've had a great welcome. People are keen and enthusiastic and want to move forward. For example, last night I met with the Parish Council in Ramsey, and I am very keen for them to be a consultative body because I want us to make the best decisions that we can make. And so to have 4 people, as there was last night, around the table rather than just me making a decision. And if they say to me, look, Father, that's probably not going to work because this and this, that's great, because I want us to make better decisions. I want us to be recognising the gifts and talents of every member of the community, and for them to feel that they have been blessed by God with abilities that they can bring to serve the church and spread the important message of the good news that the world needs to hear. We are moving forward together, and that's all of us. Please God, moving forward as a community.
You're also very keen on your online ministry, and for a long time you've been streaming your daily Mass, and of course a priest's obligation is to celebrate Mass every day, and I was pleased to see that you're continuing to stream daily Mass from wherever you are, be it Peel or be it Our Lady's in Ramsey.
Exactly. Nothing replaces being physically there, I understand that, but I usually would have 50 odd views for a weekday Mass on the YouTube channel. You know, it kind of started during COVID. We all had to get a lot better at an online presence when we physically weren't able to be present with each other. And so, you know, I was self-conscious about doing it. And then I just thought I have to get over myself and get on with it. And so, you know, it's become an important part of my ministry.
And just time now for a final thought from my guest today, priest in charge of the Catholic churches in Peel and Ramsey, Father John Hindley.
I think it's from St Bernard of Clairvaux, one of the fathers of the church, and he's talking about all that there is to learn about the church. And basically he likens it to a man drinking from a fountain. And if the man drinks from the fountain and doesn't drink it dry, he's happy because that means he can go back and drink again. And I think that's the thing with all the wisdom that there is out there. We can only take it little by little, and it means there is always more to learn. And I think that is tremendously encouraging to know that there is always more to learn and that there is more wisdom, more understanding, more appreciation to gain as you journey through life.
I watch the sunrise, lighting the sky, casting its shadows near. And on this morning, bright though it be, I feel those shadows near me. But you are always close to me, following all my ways. May I be always close to you, following all your ways, Lord. I watch the sunset fading away, lighting the clouds with sleep. And as the evening closes its eyes, I feel your presence near me. Yes, you are always close to me, following all my ways. May I be always
I Watch the Sunrise, the music of John Glynn, sung there by Daniel O'Donnell from his Faith and Inspiration collection that he recorded some 26 years ago. And when I'm at your service at this time next week, I'll have another special guest that I know you're going to love.
They said, go off into the woods somewhere by yourself and pray. Having never prayed before, I went off to the woods and nestled myself in the nook of a tree, and I looked up because I figure if there was a God, God would probably be up, and said, "Hi, I'm Jill." And inexplicably, and all of a sudden, there was this sense of another, some kind of unseen, benign presence there with me under the tree.
So who is Jill? Join me again this time next week to get the full story. But now it's time to take a look at our notice board, and we start with services and events today, the 14th. It's Anniversary Sunday today in Balagary Methodist Chapel in St Mark's, and you're warmly invited to an all-age, family-friendly service this afternoon at 2:30, led by Reverend Christvin Edbarg. The service will be followed by afternoon tea, and everyone is welcome. We're in the middle of the special festival weekend celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Isle of Man Organist Association in the company of the Scott Brothers. And there's still time to hear Jonathan Scott as he gives an organ recital in St Matthew's Church on the North Quay here in Douglas this afternoon at 3:00. There's no admission charge and there's room for everyone, so just come along to St Matthew's here in Douglas this afternoon at 3 and enjoy. Also this afternoon, you're warmly invited to the Hospice Annual Service of Remembrance and Thanksgiving, which will be in St George's Church here in Douglas this afternoon at 3:00. This is a time to gather, reflect and honour those we have loved who have died, and all are welcome. Moving on to this evening, and in Ballabeg Chapel, there's an informal cafe church tonight at 6:30. Janet Corlett will be leading this, sitting at tables with crafts, a quiz, a story and a chance to choose your favourite hymns and share refreshments too. Everyone's welcome at Ballabeg Chapel tonight at 6:30. Also this evening at 6:30, the Mariners Choir will be in Laxey Methodist Chapel on Minorca Hill. Reverend Rebecca Ingrewell will preach, and as usual there'll be supper and community hymn singing to follow. Looking to the week ahead, and on Wednesday the 17th, there's another Songs of Praise at St Adamnan's, Lonnon Old Church, starting at 7:30 and led by the Salvation Army. And also on Wednesday evening, there's another of the weekly concerts in St Thomas's Church here in Douglas. That's the church just off the promenade near the Gaiety Theatre. This Wednesday, the Hour of Music will be by Popular Manx Choir Kurjin Kujak, conducted by Annie Kizik. It starts at 7:45 with free admission, delicious refreshments and a retiring collection if you'd like to donate. Looking to next weekend, and Sunday the 21st, is the 164th chapel anniversary for Sandygate, and they'll be celebrating with a special service next Sunday evening at 6:30. Gareth Moore will preach, Christine Bragazzi is the soloist and John Neal is the organist, with refreshments afterwards and a warm welcome for all. And also next Sunday evening, the Mariners Choir will be in Kirkmackald for a service at the usual time of 6:30, and as always it'll be followed by supper and community hymn singing. And that's all that we have time for now. But I'll be back tonight at 9:00 with Sundown, and I'd love you to come and join me in our virtual lounge for our usual mix of your requests and dedications and the very best easy listening music. But for now, this is Judith saying thank you for listening and wishing you and those you love a blessed and peaceful week and a very good morning.
Station, Manx Radio.